Well, happy Monday, y'all. And it is that time for another great episode of Mason Dixon Podcast with Cousin Vinny. And we might have a few others joining us later on. But as always, I want to remind everybody that the views and opinions expressed here on Mason Dixon Podcast and on Monuments Across Dixie are our own and just our own views, and they do not represent the views and opinions of any other person, group, or organization. Remember on Facebook, for those of y'all watching there, that stars help us put up statues. So go on ahead and click that stars button and help us continue to put up more amazing memorials across Dixie. We are also live streaming this to our YouTube, Southern Media Company, as well as our Twitter or X page, as it's now called, Monuments Across Dixie, or on there, I believe the handle is Across Dixie. All right, y'all, it's been quite the week, and I figured we'd kind of talk some current events because now that free speech is back, both on Facebook and X has been wonderful with allowing free speech, we can cover some of the current stuff that we couldn't really touch upon before, which is pretty darn cool. And I guess we'll start off with the most pressing issue, and that was the inauguration, because the inauguration was met with some criticisms, especially on the left, but also from on the right. And in particular, I've noticed a lot of people, both from the South as well as some from the North, who were a little ticked off that there was the Battle Hymn of the Republic that was being played. Now, it's interesting because I often find a lot of people do not really know their history of songs and all that. The Battle Hymn of the Republic is not the song that it appears to be. At first glance, I've had people think that it's a Christian song. That's been another historical myth, or rather historical half-truth that made it into this, oh yeah, it's been going on for a while, we should just continue doing it. It's, really a wonderful hymn, and they don't know the history. Likewise, on the East Coast, we do have a lot of people that are from, different European countries, and I don't fault them because they probably weren't taught the history. I met a very nice gentleman who was from Wales, and in Wales, they do not cover the war between the states like we cover it here. And even here, it's not always studied, whether it be in college or anything else. So let's jump on into this point with the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And the Virginia Flaggers had an amazing email that was sent out about 2 years ago, for Independence Day on why we do not sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from this. This is a Confederate soldier's view of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. The songbooks of a number of the churches of the South have included the Battle Hymn of the Republic as a suitable offering in their worship. Needless to say that not one person in 100, even 1,000, realizes the origin of the song, nor that the air is that of the old war song, quote, John Brown's Body, end quote. And outside of the meaning of the song as connected with the war days in the 60s, the song is a mere jingle of words having no special thought to them. There have been much protest against the use of the song in our churches, and in one instance, it has prevented the incorporation of the song in the revision of the hymn book. It is to be hoped that other church organizations may be made aware of the origin and the meaning of the song, and that it will be purged from any collection of songs used in religious worship. The following letter comes from W.L. Jones of Williamsburg, Virginia, one of those whose feelings have been outraged by finding the song in the hymn book of his church. He says, quote, the inmost feeling of the hearts of a people are shown by the songs and hymns that they sing. The poems and ballads of the Scottish people tell us their joys and sorrows in a manner that nothing else does. The fact that they sung Rowe's version of the Psalms tell us how they viewed their religion. We best see the soul of the ancient Hebrews in their wonderful Psalms, their poetry, and their religious thought. In that great 137th Psalm, a psalm of the captivity at the Babylon, The psalmist laments, "They that wasted us require of us mirth, saying," quote, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion," end quote. "How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land?" End quote. Now, the Southern people, apparently, though dense, ignorance, but certainly not through compulsion, have printed in several of their hymn books, as if it were a hymn, a song called the Battle Hymn of the Republic, which was a product of a fanatical hatred against them, and it is filled with poisonous thrusts at them. It is a fact, but a mournful fact, that our people in their churches and Sunday schools disgrace themselves by cheerfully singing this strange song in their own land. It is not a hymn. It is not poetry. It is a mere jingle of fine words, and it would long since have fallen into oblivion, as have the other works of Julia Ward Howe. But for the fact that the Northern people, with their knowledge of how the song originated, see the bitter sting in it for the Southern people. The Northern people must laugh at us for singing their favorite song. Without an understanding of what prompted Miss Howe to write a song, a person would see no meaning in it. No harm, only that God was sharpening his sword for some unknown wicked people. She was a Boston woman of mediocre ability who wrote and spoke a great deal. An anti-slavery agitator who hoped for war on the South. She preached in Unitarian pulpits, and when in 1861 she visited Washington and saw the vast military array that Lincoln had set on foot against the South, in her joy she burst out into the curious melody words of the Battle Hymn of the Republic and falsely pretended that God had revealed the future to her. She presents the Yankee army as the army of heaven, and God is pictured as the merciless Moloch about to slay the man, the woman, and children of the South. His garments stained with their gore, there is no mercy, no pity to be found in it. Nothing could be more brutal. It is a shocking misrepresentation of our kind and loving Heavenly Father. It grieves many others as ill as myself or our Southern people can so be degenerate as to ever sing that song. I know it will never sung again when they understand the meaning of it. I served in Company C, 32nd Virginia Regiment, Corses Brigade of Pickett's Division. I am the only survivor of all the men that enlisted in the Confederate Army from this city. And so far as I can learn, I am the only survivor of the soldiers from this peninsula who surrendered with General Lee at Appomattox. I was then 19 years old. And this is a veteran's testimony from the April 1927 edition of the Confederate Veteran Magazine. Great to see you, Mr. Gary. How are you? Facts of the Confederacy says, yeah, Battle Hymn of the Republic is a false song. And it really just, what I guess irks me the most is that you have all these Southerners who they could easily be doing something right now by calling their senators, writing letters, making it known that they don't appreciate this. But what do we have? We have the same thing, apathy. You know, and the common thing I've gotten is, oh, what can we do? Well, I just told y'all, contact your senators. We've also had the whole, oh, but we're Americans now, and oh, you know, the war is over, so why even bother about this? You know, if this testimony was written in the 1920s by a Confederate patriot, you know, that was after the war, and they still had ill feelings about it. And it shows that when we stop teaching the history, when we stop educating people, this is what happens. The people forget their heritage, they forget where they came from, and they get complacent and complicit in being their own worst enemy. I myself will not sit through a sermon if the Battle Hymn of the Republic is sung. I will up and leave, as I've done that before. I usually will then send a letter to the church saying, why are we playing this song? What good does it serve? It is the most unpatriotic song. It's very similar to the Pledge of Allegiance. A lot of people do the Pledge of Allegiance. I personally choose not to, because when you know the history of it, the pledge was written by a socialist, and it was written to further kick the South when she was down. And I wish my buddy Chad was on here tonight, because we would have a really good discussion on this topic. There's this big illusion as to what patriotism is. And you get those who are on my team where they're saying, look, we respectfully are just going to dissent and we're not going to do it. Respectfully. We don't judge you if you do it, but we're not going to be part of it. I know a lot of people muted the TV. Quite a few people walked out of the rooms from what I heard. I myself just mute, walk out of the room, had a nice cigar I had from Gettysburg, and I came back and watched the rest of the inauguration when it was over. But I think, and I also think too, right? Being on this issue right here, you also have people that the minute they criticize President Trump, they get people jump down their throat saying, you're a rhino, you're this, you're that. I tend to be more fundamentally conservative than a lot of the GOP out there. I do not consider myself a Republican because I do not agree with, number one, the historic origins of the party, as well as what the party has become. I don't see myself as a Democrat because there's no more Jeffersonian conservatives. Last Southern Democrat died in around 2013. So there's got to be some party for people that are fundamentally conservative, tired of this nonsense, and want some proper reforms. And then you also have people that they're quick to say, oh, but I don't want to be militant. Well, no one's asking anyone to be militant. I didn't realize that contacting your senators with a respectful Christian worded email is considered militant. I always look to the works of Mildred Rutherford Lewis, great Southern patriot, huge inspiration for teachers. She was a Southern woman who did not take no for an answer, and she reformed education at a time when women could not vote or do anything, and she managed to do it. And if Miss Millie could do that, how come we can't get involved and advocate on our own? People have forgotten to advocate, how to use their state government, how to get involved locally. And this kind of change happens locally and then also on a larger stand. So something like writing churches, writing the people that print the hymn books and respectfully asking the cessation of the Battle Hymn of the Republic is a great step in the right direction. And all that. That's right. Facts of the Confederacy says they use God to replace the Mississippi state flag. These brainwashed morons think because the new flag saying, "In God we trust," is a better alternative. These people are destroying our culture, hate God. Exactly, Facts of the Confederacy. And I agree with that because this has been something that has been ongoing. I have seen countless times in, Mississippi where, people who you think were on our side were like, oh, well, it's a lost fight. Let's just stop fighting over it. Or, oh, we never got our flag back. Well, there's also an episode to be had on that because that alleged pastor who was involved in the Mississippi flag thing was a little darn shady. And that is part of the problem too, is the complacency. A lot of times people in the South and even in the North, they let people come on in there, take away their heritage, take away everything under the guise of being diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And the DEI nonsense is also partly why we're in this mess. I do have hope that things will change, but it also has to be on the people to stand up and actively fight against the counter movement that we might see. And the Mississippi state flag, how many Republicans did that? Mississippi was controlled by Republicans, and it was only made possible by the Republicans. So oftentimes you hear the Republicans also go on and attack the Confederacy because, quote, Democrats. And when they say that, I just do this, y'all. Face palm. It is one of the most silly things that you'll see with the Republican Party of today constantly, and rather I should say the mainstream section of the GOP, because there is a faction of the GOP that's a little bit better. But the mainstream section will always demonize the South, and they ignore the real history. They forget that the North invented Jim Crow, and they sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic thinking, oh, it's a Republican song. It's wonderful. It's this and that. It was really just a crazy lady song, and that was the Battle Hymn of the Republic. It is not Christian. It does not belong in the church, and it does not deserve to be sung in the church by anyone who so-called calls themselves a Christian. A more fitting place for the Battle Hymn of the Republic. It might be a Satanist temple, but it sure as heck ain't a church. Exactly, facts of the Confederacy. DEI is a false god, and it's one of those things like climate change and everything else that have been more or less weaponized against people and used as something that it ain't. And that's one of the problems that I have because, as someone who's dealing with it in college, we had to deal with that nonsense. And now that thankfully it is in the process of being removed everywhere, I do foresee that the colleges might become a little more woke. Corey, my friend, how are you? Great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thanks for interrupting my bath.
Poor Corey here was in the tub when I sent him a message. I said, take your time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it seems like every time you want to go live, I'm conveniently submersed in the bathtub.
Oh, man. Don't go live there. I know that X has gotten a lot better. I don't think they're that cool. That would be horrible.
Oh, dude, that would be horrible. I don't think the entire Confederation or any form of this union or any forms of humanity wants to see me in the tub.
Y'all want a good laugh? I figured we'll quickly break the ice before we get back into the discussion. An ongoing problem, especially since everything has now been on Zoom since 2020, which I don't mind in certain things, but you'll find that there's been a lot of issues on Zoom where professionals don't realize where they are or that their computer's on, and heaven forbid they're at the worst place at the worst time. At my college program, we had to do an intro video for the entire year in residence, and at the end we would do a closing one. Both of them were mandatory early on a Sunday. Well, there was a particular student, not in my cohort. She was in a different one. She had her camera on as she got out of the shower, and she was very heavy set, and she was getting dressed and getting ready. And then after you saw stuff, because people were like gasping, the professor was much older. He had no idea what went on. This went on for almost 10 minutes straight. And then she's applying makeup while her boobs are hanging out. And we're all like trying to message the professor saying, shut her camera off. Oh, this is really bad. And then the college finally had to say, yeah, y'all got to be like mindful of where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely got to be mindful of where you are. And yeah, there's been a boatload of videos that probably belong on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah, they do. So what did you think about the Battle Hymn of the Republic being played at inauguration?
To be honest, I was a tad annoyed, but then I just think back to what Dr. McClanahan says, that pretty much as we like Trump, we got to remember that he is a 1940s New Deal Democrat, and he's from New York. So
exactly,
even though he's put folks like Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, and who's committed to restoring the military-based names back to Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, and Fort Lee and Fort Hood. But deep down, we got to remember these are quintessential Yankees. This is a Yankee empire. This is this empire, exactly what he says. These guys are either West Coast Straussians, Joffaites, or New Deal Democrats. They believe in that we're one big nation. What is it that Dr. Hand called a proposition nation? They believe they believe in the proposition nation, that this whole union preceded the states when the states that conceived the nation. I mean, just about everything about this country, dude, is a byproduct of Lincolnites, radical Republicans. Even our national anthem comes from a socialist. And they're all hoopla about, and you see all the hoopla about about Elon Musk alleged making a Sieg Heil when people seem to forget before we started doing this, we used the Bellamy salute, which was the extension of the arm.
That's right. And that was, I just wanted to clarify, that was the pledge, not the anthem, right?
Oh yeah,
that
the
was
Pledge
the
of Allegiance,
pledge, not
yes.
the anthem.
Oh, why am I confused? Yes.
That's okay. You're fine. I figured I was like, but yeah, no, that's right. And I think I mentioned earlier too that, you know, when you know the history of the Pledge of Allegiance, you're like, oh my gosh, I was never taught this. And I don't blame people for getting a little upset, maybe agitated when you tell them, hey, I don't say this pledge, or I don't do this. And it's like, what on earth is wrong with you? We weren't taught this growing up in school. It was one of those things that our ancestors knew. And, you know, like when you read the excerpts from the Confederate Veteran, the old, like much older edition, when it was the UCV, you learn from them, or the Confederate Survivors Association, which was lesser known, because what these men had to endure, it was horrific. And then, you know, when the last Confederate soldier died, that was also the start of like the dominoes falling over, because people became more distant from the roots, their heritage, and all that. And then it was originally their real sons and real daughters that would carry on the legacy for years to come. And that's how, you know, we used to have wonderful ceremonies in Arlington because of real daughters and all that. But as they passed on, so did the activism, so did that energy.
Yeah.
Here we go. Facts of the Confederacy says, I remember when I was in college and I was attacked by my professor for teaching the truth about our Confederate history. She attacked our heritage, saying we were fighting for slavery and that blacks moved up north. I tried to explain to her about the exclusion laws in the North that kept blacks out. Exactly. And to that point, I was arguing with somebody a day ago, because again, you see this ridiculous narrative where they'll say the Democrat plantation, which is false, or they'll say Confederates, Democrats, and they just demonize our history that way. And that is why you see the Republicans that will fight for anything, for the most part, revolutionary. But when it comes to the war between the states, it's usually only the Yankee stuff they fight for, not the South. And because it's their lies and narratives, like Dinesh D'Souza, his very defamatory and false. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much these guys are Straussians.
Oh, they are. And, you know, it's Dinesh D'Souza's documentary was a propaganda piece that I cannot tell you how many GOP in New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland were going to say, I'm going to fight like I'm with Lincoln's army. And my response goes, so in other words, you are a Democrat, by modern standards? Question mark. And it's one of those things where they always forget. They forget that we had concentration camps, aka northern prisons, that were up north. They forget that if you were a free black person, you could live just fine in the South, no problems. If you tried to move to New Jersey had exclusionary laws where they banned anybody who is freed from moving in. Same with Illinois, really restricted Indiana,
Illinois, and they had all these black codes back in the time. Right. And then you have John C. Fremont's bunch, who the Free Soilers, where it quite literally means free soil for white men.
That's right. They also forget that California had the Indian Slave Act, which was basically in motion up until about the 30s, and it was not fully repealed years later. And I remember telling that to somebody, and they were not believing it one bit.
Yeah, Facts of the Confederacy just finished a continuation.
And because California, they say the California Indian Slave Act was not fully repealed until 1937. Parts of it, though, did remain long after that. And it was a loophole, more or less, after the 13th Amendment. California had a way it was written that they could maintain Indian slavery in that state.
Oh, yeah.
And then Facts of the Confederacy says, I said you really only started having a movement up north and places like Chicago for war heating up in Europe in the early 1900s, and this was called the Great Migration. The class was in shock, and she threatened to send me out of the room. And this is right. One of the things you deal with all the darn time with these professors is that, where I'm doing my second master's, one of my professors is the former president of the ACA, American Counseling Association. When I tell you woke is all heck, and my favorite, when she pretends to be neutral, you really know she ain't neutral, because underneath there is something very biased.
Oh, yes. Aberforth. Kitty.
So it's just one of those things where, I do foresee the next 4 years, we are going to have to be doing a lot of educating. And this is just the nature of the problem. I don't think that's necessarily an issue. I just think it's something that we have to be, vigilant about. And it's a great opportunity for us to do more advocacy work, because we do have a GOP majority in the House and in the Senate. I do think it's still going to take a lot of educating to see change. And brings us to our next point about the military bases, because I do like that immediately after taking office, Trump did go firm with the executive orders, and one of them was renaming something. There was a mountain range in Alaska that they renamed to something else because they didn't want the president.
Yeah, it was Mount Denali that they renamed from Mount McKinley back in 2015, under just a year before he took office the first term. And he was, along with being a fan of President Andrew Jackson, he's a big fan of William McKinley, and he wrote in his executive order to restore it from Mount Denali to Mount McKinley.
That's right.
Yeah, even their representative Lisa Murkowski, a squish Republican, essentially was so upset about it.
Oh, she's real bad. Yeah, you had some rhinos like that too that were melting down. And I think what it really proves is him doing that shows that when something is renamed because of cultural Marxism, you can name it back if enough things happen. And we've proven that in Virginia, where they renamed the Lee and Jackson School, and those names all had to go back after the board got taken over by better parents, better patriotic citizens. It was renamed properly. And I think that this can happen with Arlington, because the biggest problem I've had with Arlington, there's been a lot of false rumors. Even people in the Southern Heritage organizations that I won't name were saying that, oh, it's a done deal. Let's just move on. Let's forget about it. Well, no, not quite, because a nameless organization. So there was Defend Arlington, who is, again, I can't stress this enough, from day one has been out there saying, number one, protect the monument. We were the first organization that came together, united people from different areas, not just the Confederate history, but all history, Jewish American heritage, American history, art history, Virginia history. All of that mattered with this memorial because it was so multifaceted on the issue at hand. And another nameless organization.
Did y'all have Moses Ezekiel's family in the movement as well?
We did. So a quick note on that, because a lot of people might get confused. There was a very socialist liberal doctor, Dr. Ezekiel, Judith Ezekiel, and she's like a doctor of gender studies, which is a false degree. So here you have, there's this gender studies activist, if you didn't even say that, because I wouldn't even call her a professor nonetheless. And she was the only dissenting voice on the second call and the third call, because there was about three major calls that they had for Arlington. And when the person, because we had to work with a young lady that was one of our representatives for the call. And when she said, okay, Judith Ezekiel, you would think that this lady would be respectful. She shouts at the army person going, "That's Dr. Ezekiel to you." And then she went on a rant claiming that she was harassed and this and that. The real family of Moses Ezekiel invited her to their one thing, and she took it as a personal threat to be invited to a party. And she claimed to be related to Moses Ezekiel, but she was not. She was a false ancestor. The real ancestor of Moses Ezekiel told her off in the best way possible.
Descendant, not ancestor. Descendant, not ancestor.
You're right. Yes.
But yeah, I'm glad to hear that a real descendant of Moses' family took part in all this, because we've been getting, and early on in our movements, man, we've been getting a lot of false descendants like that heretic priest Rob Lee, claiming to be a descendant of Robert E. Lee, and
he was nuts. He blocked Jersey Flaggers on Twitter and Monuments Across Dixie on Twitter.
Me too.
And y'all, Ozarks Flaggers as well, because that was one of them things where
I have it pinned on my page like a trophy.
As you should. See, that's a badge of honor.
Yes. Because I mean, he even blocked John Hill too, and his AP Hill Foundation. Because I mean, John Hill tore into him big time, and I just gotta say it was pure entertainment that you just need to get a fold out chair and grab the popcorn and the soda.
You really do, because it was one of those things where here you have a priest, and again, this is links to the Battle Hymn of the Republic, where people think it's Christian, it's holy. This is a priest in a position of power who is doing things that are so unholy, like telling lies, false ancestry, which I don't even give him the benefit of the doubt, because it's almost like he tried to then pull the insanity defense, because he then claimed that he did a post where he was driving for whatever reason past the mental hospital that he was a patient at, and he was telling his son about it. I don't know what sane father, number one, would tell their children, yeah, I was a patient at this hospital. Oh, yada, yada, yada. I mean, really, it spoke volumes. And how did he even become a priest? I'll even shock you with this. The church that I used to go to growing up, we had a huge problem with corruption. And the previous priest that was there, who was a father, I'm going to say Father Johnson, as an alias. So Father Johnson was stealing money, stealing church wine, having gambling, doing all stuff that he shouldn't be doing as a priest. And he was caught, and they gave him the ultimatum. They said, Father Johnson, you have the option of, number one, retirement, or we'll put Reverend Johnson Parish Center in your honor if you retire now and retire with honor, or we'll remove you. And that was really because the church was not doing well as it was. He was kind of on the woke side too back then. So it took them a while to even come back from that. But, it was one of those things where they hired somebody with no values, and instead of doing the right thing and fully firing them, they allowed them to retire, and they rewarded him by putting his name on the building, which should not even be there. Why would you put a name of somebody dishonest on a building is beyond me. Yeah, it ain't that the truth. I'm going to say FOC, Facts of the Confederacy.
Especially Episcopalians. Yes, they'll let anybody be a priest, essentially.
And remember the National Cathedral, that bishop, oh my gosh, where she's now been fired. But I was not shocked. I was disappointed. Yes. Was I shocked? No, because this is what the National Cathedral did.
Yeah.
Here's the windows.
Oh, I know. The
now and forever racial justice windows.
Oh yeah, when I saw what they changed it to, I was just like, ugh. Who wants to see that in a church? It's
trash. It's total trash.
Yes. Oh yeah.
This is what they think is appropriate for church. To write no foul play, the design of it is so poor. The coloration is yucky. It's just really, it looks like somebody took a comic book and just slapped it on there. The colors aren't the classical, watercolor like glaze that you would get from stained glass. It looks very awful. And why would you have that in a church versus something classical, historical, and Christian that they replaced it with?
Yeah, and stained glass is an art form. That's not art. I mean, that voiceover line, this is a work of art.
That's right.
This is bull. That is bull.
And this is the windows that were replaced. Look over here. You had the Lee and Jackson right here. You had explaining our history. You had federal, Confederate, federal, Confederate. You had federal, Confederate, and the same thing right here. And it showed.
No, that's not federal. The white, the blue with the white dot. That's the Hardy flag, dude.
Oh yes, and the cannons.
Yeah.
And that one
I believe that's Jefferson Davis right there.
That is.
And but yeah, I don't recognize that one flag you were pointing at under the Dixie flag. I think that one right there is a cross cannon from what it looks like, and that looks like a fort flag.
And these were all things that taught us, our history, and that they were very important for the National Cathedral. If you're thinking about a nation and all that, that's more appropriate than social justice. And the fact that they had to tear down something so beautiful in a church, what the heck was with this? And, it was one example of how churches, they used to be wonderful when it came to learning values and all this. When this DEI nonsense infected the church, which has been going on for a while. I had a magazine somewhere from the Southern Partisan magazine. We really need to bring this magazine back with Brian McClanahan, because the Southern Partisan magazine included stuff that was so valuable, stuff that Southerners have forgotten. And it used to be only $6.50.
Oh, I know. I need to order that book from Matt's store, that textbook. And
that's a good one.
Have you read into it yet?
I've read half of it, and I do at some point want to do like what I call my little school on here, where I'm going to kind of go over it, just summarize it, and we'll have some discussion. That way it'll be easier for people to digest what they read. That would be very beneficial, I think.
Yeah, I just got a new book on what happened. We had at our Lee Jackson dinner, we had a guest lecturer from Missouri, and he brought his books to sign and sell on what really happened at the Lawrence raid, and between Quantrells and the raid on Lawrence. And you wouldn't believe what this key historian did, who was a grandson of a Union soldier. He willfully glossed over the facts, willfully did it. And you probably heard of him. It's William Conley.
Yes.
Man. Yeah, and it's literally a book on examining the evidence from both sides, and from what it looked like, this was not a civilian population. This was, if any of you have ever heard of these people from watching Outlaw Josie Whale, Redlegs, this was their HQ, Lawrence, and this was a military colony where military folks and their families lived. Yes, there were women and kids there, but the Quantrells, the survivors, in their own words, do say the Quantrill and his raiders didn't willfully attack civilians. If you had a gun or a weapon, I'm sorry, but you're fair game, essentially, if you're shooting at them, because you're a combatant, you're a militia. But no, it wasn't a complete. He got completely glossed over. Conley, he made it look like the popular narrative that people talk about today: Quantrells, raiders attacking the civilians. And yes, facts of the Confederacy. I can't stand Ty Sajali either. He is not only a liar, he's a Strauss. He's the worst kind of Straussian there is. And I attempted to read his book, and it's bunk. I rank him and
You broke up a little bit.
You there, Vinny?
Yep.
Oh, I said that I ranked Ty Sadgerly and William Conley with Dick Irving up there. If you know who that is, Vinny.
Yes. I agree with you on that too. And Ty Sigil, he went around, and oddly enough, there has been a few cases, and this is a good positive, Civil War roundtables that don't want him there because they had him once and they were like, what the heck are you talking about? Because his book is not history. It's a journal. It's more or less a journal saying,
no,
I want to be recognized. I'm really woke. Promote my name and I'll do this for you. That's really the entire message of it. And he was one of the big ones in a position of power where he used his power to cancel out history. And did you know this? Get this.
Yes.
The UDC every year would give out military awards to the military schools. And now the Citadel is the only one that takes the award. The Robert E. Lee sword was given every single year to the Citadel, not the Citadel, West Point in New York. You had to earn it.
Yes.
It was the cadet there that had the highest score in math, which is a really hard subject as it is. So people, number one, had the incentive to want to earn it. They also had the honor of earning it. And it was not something that was given out haphazardly, but it was given out since I believe around the 30s. And what happened was West Point decided in 2015, they no longer wanted it. That organization received a package and they look at it and it had the sword and it had a little letter. And the letter said, we appreciate your organization wanting to, give us an award, but it's no longer in line with our college's values, and we are respectfully returning it. Signed by Ty Sigil. So Ty Sigil was in charge of that area of West Point in 2015. And as Trump took office 2 years later, this is how he reared his ugly head. And it's one of those examples where, we have this issue right now of where these people come from. They've been doing evil things long before Trump. So it wasn't Trump that brought them out. They were doing their stuff. They just got elevated by the movement that was coming against Trump the first time. And after that, they were further elevated under Biden's progressives. A lot of them have been doing stuff since the mid to early 2000s.
Yeah. PragerU has been honest though lately, because they did put a poll recently about what caused the war, and just about overwhelmingly, and their poll says it was not about slavery, and that there was something more to it. So it's, from the looks of it, the tide's turning. It quite literally is, because as you can tell, Vinny, the common folk like us are getting sick of woke gender ideology and all this craziness. Our generation and some younger than us are now part of what can be said pro-life generation. There's more people going to the what do they call it? Rally for Life, or
that's right.
Yeah. And those on the other side of the aisle, they can't even string enough people together. They're a hodgepodge of different folks with different ideologies and different end goals.
Without a doubt. And that's been ultimately why this has basically been a battle of attrition, because back in 2020, obviously you had the scam that happened and all that, but we still did our best there. And ever since then, it's been growing progressively as the younger generation is now coming to be adults. I've noticed a lot more younger people who are 18, 19, 20, who will be doing a street fair event. I love those flags. Where can I get one? Oh, I fly one. They're not afraid to fight back now, which has been like, oh my gosh, where has this been for the last 10 years? Our generation, sadly, is a lost cause in a lot of ways. Between half of them being just, you can't have a normal conversation. The other half are better. And then there's our faction, which is the more, conservative faction of it, which we're almost homeless. Like, where do we go? So that's been something where I've been fighting against constantly, and, trying to wake people up and educate people. It's not been easy.
It ain't. No. some people are even surprised. And I get in trouble with some Republicans when I say this too, that I mean that a lot of the things the Republicans stand for today does not align most of the time with the founders.
Oh, absolutely. And the crazy thing, we've had Republicans here in my state. They were sharing stuff about like what's going on with, the deportations and all that. And in New Jersey, it's such a problem now because we've had a huge issue with crime just completely going through the roof. And we had Democrats who are in higher positions of power, and even Phil Murphy, who are saying, we're going to openly go against this. And my response has been, in other words, states' rights. In other words, the South was right. And just like that.
Or in other words, nullification.
Exactly. Right.
I know. It seems like when they're out of power, the Democrats usually, it seems awfully convenient when they want to invoke nullification or states' rights and rights of their citizens.
Absolutely.
I mean, well, more power to them, in my opinion, if they want to invoke nullification, but at least do it honestly.
Do it honestly and do it correctly. And that's something that, the Democrats typically these days, the ones in office, only do things when it's convenient for them. But the minute you have the tiny conservative faction of the GOP wanting to do something, they jump out and then they get the mainstream, as I call them, GOP, going, oh, that's too radical. We don't agree with that GOP member.
Oh, yeah.
Facts of the Confederacy says they ignored emails when I requested their sources of Ty Sigil's video he made with them. They care not. I agree with that too, because PragerU, right? They did a video, 2 of their videos, one with Ty Sigil, the other one, they attacked the UDC. And like the way they portrayed them was so insulting. Like I'm shocked that that organization didn't send them a cease and desist, because it was so ridiculous what they did and how they said the quote lost cause, which every time they talk about the lost cause, they twist everything about it.
Yeah, and I believe we have a word for them for every time they call us the lost causers, is the righteous causers, because they think that they were righteous in sending troops to invade our states and burn our farms and attack our civilians and kidnap them. Even, I mean, that people seem to forget Lincoln was not a good guy up north either. I mean, he most people would be surprised that he even imprisoned Star Spangled Banner and author Francis Scott Key's grandson.
That's right.
In the very fort his grandfather composed that poem. Talk about brutal irony.
100%. And the irony in that, his grandson wrote a great testimony, which I've read before on here, and it really showed that like illusion of patriotism, how people value Lincoln now like he was some kind of god. They ignore all the awful things he did. And there's a lot of GOP how many GOP that they want the national anthem everywhere, they don't know the history of the national anthem and what his grandson went through or what he went through. And you'll never see that. And there's a wonderful book called Maryland, My Maryland. And the author covers how Maryland is a southern state, but it's been trampled almost out of existence. Maryland is like a fraction of what it once was. And I remember as a young boy going there all the time to Maryland. Part of my family's roots go to Maryland, and the whole state is sadly changed for the worst.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also doing my petition.
I have family in Baltimore too, man. And the city of Baltimore as well has practically forgotten how Lincoln's troops practically trampled through the city. That it might as well be subject to a sack. You can only equate it to a sack.
Absolutely.
Or when they arrested the delegates who were going to vote on secession when they weren't, and when the votes they had weren't even for secession, it was for neutrality. Neutrality won the day. They were going to stay out of it entirely.
That's right.
But good old Lincoln sent troops to arrest every detractor, every newspaper editor that ever dared critique him.
Yeah, that's true. That's been something that's been ongoing, and I can't tell you enough how how bad it's been, and clearing up the historical myths, and even with Arlington, I had a very nice lady who she was so grateful for my posts and me teaching her all this because she's a Jewish American. She came over here, and she was appalled that they destroyed Moses Ezekiel's grave. They removed it, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" And her husband, great historian. His family's been here for a while. He might have roots to the South because I believe his last name I found, matches in Hollywood Cemetery. Wanted to learn more. And, we had a great conversation on that and whatnot. And I shared a petition. So here's the, I did all the links down there. The petition will have all the things to, and I can't share this with your friends and your families and all this. If it will show up for me. It's from gopetition.com, and it's President Trump Restore Arlington National Cemetery Reconciliation Memorial. Fill it out there, and it talks about what happened with the naming commission and all that right there. And dear President Trump, I'm requesting that you issue an immediate executive order to reinstall the Reconciliation Memorial in Section 16 of Arlington National Cemetery by the Harris and Biden administration. I know you tried to prevent the destruction of American history when you vetoed the 2021 NDAA and requested that you put this on your first day agenda when inaugurated. Thank you. And you can even customize your stuff right there.
Your response.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's what, it's proof, y'all, that this memorial can go back. If the memorial can be removed, it can go back without a problem. And that's what it comes down to. We've seen this time and time again with things that were renamed in 2020. Finally, people acting like they have some sense saying, you know what, we're sorry we caved into Marxism. Let's go against this. And, it's a different feel because I went to an inauguration watch party. It was wonderful. And after we all went on a little car rally, we drove past the golf course.
I think, you're buffering.
Is it buffering? Better now? Oh. Can you hear me now? Facts of the Confederacy, not on the subject, but did y'all ever read the agreement between South Carolina and the federal government with Fort Sumter from 1805? It says Corey's frozen. Yeah, Corey, I don't see you on my end. Educate us more, facts of the Confederacy, because I think I know what you're talking about. I just want to make sure. And one thing I want to do, if we'll see if Corey comes back on here, is when I do these programs, I always like to honor a Confederate patriot. I got a wonderful roster of Tennessee Confederate veterans, and I figured I would read out one of their stories to honor them because that's just the right thing to do. And we're going to start with, here we go. William D. Allison, he was a private in Company H, 16th North Carolina Infantry, born on July 7th, 1832, in Monroe County, Tennessee, and died July 2nd, 1894, in Loudoun County, Tennessee. It says that during the war, he was wounded in the left leg, captured at Gettysburg on July 1863, hospitalized at Chester, Pennsylvania, until transferred to Point Lookout, Maryland, paroled and transferred to City Point, Virginia for exchange. Arrived March 20th, 1864, reported absent, wounded through October 1864. as may be deemed the most expended by the executive of the United States on the same keep and a garrison or garrisons therein. Failure to comply with this. Wrong one. South Carolina had freely ceded property in Charleston Harbor to the federal government in 1805 upon the express conditions that, quote, the United States within 3 years repair the fortifications as may be deemed most expedient by the executive of the United States on the same and keep a garrison or garrisons therein. Failure to comply with this condition on the part of the government would render that this grant or cession is void and of no effect. In other words, the property belonged to South Carolina. Had an idea, and that was it. Because I remember at the convention that was in Charleston, South Carolina, they covered that in 2 of the programs I went to.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think my internet glitched on me.
Oh, you're okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just weeks ago, I went 2 weeks without internet access in my house and had to wait for a technician to come.
Oh, heck no.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't get anything running because of that. But yeah, too bad I didn't get to go to that convention in South Carolina. Yeah.
That's right. Although a lot went on in South Carolina for sure. Facts of the Confederacy says you will not find one book that covers that in modern academia. Exactly. And that's part of the problem is that most books that you find, Brian McClanahan even said this, most books you'll find that were written, after the event, it's a person's opinion, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. And that's the problem, is to find the primary sources and read them, because a lot of times with the righteous cause narrative, so much is censored.
Yeah. Just about everything is either censored or historians, when really they're activists, just construe the narrative of what happened, kind of like what Conley did.
That's right.
Thank God for this lecture we had, who quite literally made a book about re-examining the evidence of primary sources, and found them in Connolly's own papers, his own estate papers. Found the evidence within his own papers, dude, and wrote a book about it.
Excellent. That's right.
Oh yeah, and that's definitely something we all, as Southerners and historians and academics, need to do is put the facts out there, kind of like what I showed you, and among other of our audiences out there, what happened in my hometown by the Yankee Army, what they did to our women.
That's right.
Yeah, these weren't gentlemen soldiers. These were looters, thieves, invaders, just people who would burn our homes and steal.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing where, they tend to glaze that over when you talk about history. Or my favorite now, and this is what's becoming the new righteous cause, the whole, well, I honor both sides. And I'm going, that whole I honor both sides narrative has been here for ages under the guise of that, but it's really righteous cause. When will you see them embrace our Southern heroes like they should be? And that's been the problem with any movement out there, is you'll always find people that tell the truth, and you'll find people that are a little bit more wishy-washy with things. And that's where, we're going to be in the long haul for this, and the fight for this.
Oh yeah. And no, I've never been to Collierville, Tennessee. About as close to Tennessee I've ever been is pretty much Elm Springs, Columbia. I've never been to Collierville or Franklin.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you see what? I'm not sure what you saw. Did you see on the Judy's photography about what they did, what some vandal did to Oakland Cemetery of Richmond?
I heard it was trashed up. Do you know the extent?
It looked like someone took their vehicle and drove into it. I tagged you in one of I tagged you in a comment on our Instagram page.
No, there is. Ooh, interesting. So the monument that's right there, and it says,
Yeah, Judy Smith.
and it's still there. It looks like excellent. The Louisa Bedford chapter, in memory of battles fought at Collegeville, Tennessee. Battle of Collegeville marker. And one of the markers near Battle of Collegeville said on October 11th, 1863, General James Chalmers, with a force of about 3,000 Confederate cavalrymen consisting of the 7th Tennessee, 13th Tennessee, 18th and 2nd Missouri, 2nd Arkansas, 3rd Mississippi, approached Collierville from the south along Mount Pleasant Road. Collierville, a Union supply base, was occupied continuously during the war by Union forces, the town being heavily fortified and occupied by the 66th Indiana Infantry. At this time, a battle ensued, and the ground was heavily contested. By coincidence, on the same day, Major General Sherman was dispatched from Memphis to start his march to the sea.
Yeah.
And then it says, the company fought with great courage and determination for 4 long years against an invading army with far superior resources. One of their members, Corporal Merritt R. Brown, distinguished himself at the Battle of Murfreesboro and received the Confederate Medal of Honor for bravery. By the end of the war, most of the men in the company had been wounded or captured. Many were killed and lie in mass graves or unmarked graves throughout the South or in northern prisons of war graves. After the company was paroled on May 1st, 1865 in Greensboro, North Carolina, the men of Wigfall Graves returned to Collierville to find many of their homes destroyed and their property confiscated. Despite the hardships inflicted by the Northern Occupation Army, these men worked diligently as farmers and merchants to rebuild their homeland. Descendants of these brave men still live in Collierville today.
That's wonderful.
And let me look at the map too. Let's see on Google Map. Oh, that's really cool. Heck yeah. It shows it, which is pretty cool, as a Confederate battle flag. Has the X.
Yeah,
Just
they shaped it like St. Andrew's cross.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we have something similar in my hometown. We have, and it's literally called Confederate Square.
It was a sly symbol of resistance after the war. That's right, because the women especially were good at that, being sly and sneaky in plain sight. And the citizens, like in Louisiana, the forbidden artwork, you had the first national flowers.
Yes. Yeah, talk about it was subtle. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I sent you a link in your messenger, and I sent you some screenshots as well to show you the damage.
Oh, geez. You know, something recent happened. I got to wait to get more information because I actually want to do a whole video on the cemetery damage, because this is something that is ongoing in other states. I don't know how much I can say now, so I'm going to say nothing, but something really bad happened in a state, which we'll talk about off air. Yeah, and there's tire
Yeah.
track. Oh man.
And my Confederate ancestor is buried there, dude.
Look at that. That's just disgusting.
Yeah.
That is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, my 4 times great grandfather is buried in that cemetery, dude. And so is Ashley Hobbs' husband, Tim. His ancestors buried there too. A couple of his too. And thankfully the Judy Smith, the photographer who was out there, um, pretty much confirmed to me that my ancestors' plot was not touched. Thank the Lord. There was a particular spot that they ran over, and mine was closer to the road. And from they picked a particular section was ran over, and my ancestor was spared. And yeah, though I can't speak for his other ancestors who are buried there too. Yeah. And from what I've seen in the comments, the stones were re-erected, and where the tire tracks were smoothed over. So nothing was busted. Essentially, thank the Lord. And
Thank
if there was
God.
any damage, they were back where they were.
I would love that. It's like sad. You almost need a reinforced fence. I would love to have like a guard around there with like the tire poppers that come out.
Oh, we at one cemetery here in Arkansas, we have 24/7 surveillance after a bunch of punks, a bunch of what I can only describe as a bunch of paint happy punks. Thought they were Picasso on our monument down there, and we caught them with a camera, and we've been watching it ever since. And it sounds sad to say because we don't have if that's what ever happened, Vinny, that we would need to justify putting 24/7 surveillance. But I hope after this, Oakland and Hollywood cemeteries, I hope somebody puts a camera out there, a motion sensitive camera.
I agree. And it's sad that you have to do this in the modern age because this is why I said from day one, when people said, put all your flags and monuments in cemeteries or museums, my response has been, okay, cemeteries, which is the least safe place ever, the least secure place so they could be vandalized. That happened in North Carolina, where they removed a memorial that didn't have to be moved, and it got moved to a cemetery, trashed up overnight. Other example was museums have been set on fire. We've had documents get lost intentionally. So putting a flag or our memorials in places where they're going to be more vulnerable, that is what happened with this whole compromise nonsense. And every time they say we should honor, but that's when I just tune them out. Because remember, y'all, but and opposite. And facts of the Confederacy, I figure will honor your ancestor. My 3 times great-grandfather was Thomas Madison Norfleet, 1st Mississippi Confederate Cavalry, Company B, Woods Regiment. Salute.
Salute.
And because we're roughly at the hour mark, I think this is a good place to end, y'all, because we covered a lot of our key points.
Yeah, we did.
All right, y'all. Well, y'all stay Southern and Deo Vindice.
Yeah, I think you froze up again, Benny. Deo Vindice, man. And stay Southern.
That's right. Stay Southern, y'all. Oh, you have one more thing. What is that, Facts of the Confederacy?
What is it, bud?
I shall give you a few moments.
Okay.
A quote from Sherman himself about my grandfather's unit. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh man.
And just a quick reference, y'all, we usually go live on Thursdays. I don't think I will be able to this week because I will be out in the Yankee state of Illinois for another residency. But I am going to see the Confederate monument that's out there in Illinois, so that should be nice.
Oh, he put the quote.
On August 6, 1863, he wrote, "Some of the Writ Adams cavalry are about Jackson, and the rascals ate some of our bread." That is funny.
Rascals. Talk about paying a compliment.
Well, y'all stay Southern, and Deo Vindice.
Deo Vindice unreconstructed.
Amen.
Amen.